Good morning and welcome to a special edition of It's How You'll Be Remembered. I am Julie Jones, your host and the CEO of today's professionals. And with me today, many of you may know Casey Hasten. She is the founder and CEO, owner of Ascend Talent Partners. And you probably also know her as the CEO of Success North Dallas. Casey, my friend, thank you so much for coming on today.
Julie Jones, it is my pleasure to be here with you today.
I'm so glad. We are kicking off National Business Etiquette Week. And so I wanted to do something special this week because I think that we need to bring back kindness and respect, and we need to bring back making the effort to stand out in a positive way. And I reached out to you because we met networking, of course, but you also had me come in and do a class with your team pre-COVID. This was a few years ago, but that I still remember that class as being so much fun. We did it over a lunch and we talked all things image and professionalism with your sales team, right?
Yep.
Tell me, why did you want to even do that class?
So I am always, running teams and leading teams, I'm always looking for ways that they can develop and better themselves, but I don't want to do the same thing everybody else is doing. And my business, we're in recruiting. And so we do a lot of client lunches, either trying to get the client or post placement to celebrate. And I just wanted everybody to be on their best, right? I wanted them to have that little bit level up from other recruiters. So I thought, what can I do? And I've done some really strange lunch and learns. We did a whole lunch and learn on laughing meditation one time. Okay.
That is interesting.
Not even kidding. We did laughter yoga during that too. So
okay,
we'll have to talk about that. But
laughter is good for the soul.
It is so good for the soul. And did you know whether you laugh for real or you laugh for fake, your brain doesn't know the difference?
Oh, I've heard that. Yes, I've heard
releases the same endorphins. So back to the etiquette. Just really wanted to give my team a heads up. And I actually found you online. I don't know if you remember that. I sent a request to you and I was taking proposals from about 3 different etiquette coaches at the time. And you just stood out.
Oh, I do not remember that because I thought we were connected through a mutual friend, but maybe it was that we found out later that we were all connected. Okay. Yes. Well, it's been pre-COVID, so I've slept since then.
It was like 7 or 8 years ago, believe it or not.
I know. It's been a while.
And I still remember. Okay. I have to tell a story here real quick.
Okay. Go ahead.
Because one of my biggest takeaways from that lunch and learn was the food you order. And my favorite food is French onion soup. And you're like, no, Casey, not at client meetings. So every time I go to a client meeting, I'm like, no French onion soup.
Yes.
Too messy.
Yeah. So it is, it's very difficult to eat. And we did that one time. And this person that I was working with, it was a one-to-one coaching program. And he loved French onion soup. And so I said, it's really hard to eat. You might want to consider another choice. He goes, no, I think I can do it. And so I just, okay. It was just us. And so, when you're in one-to-one coaching or in a class, this is the place to make mistakes, right? It's the place to learn. And sometimes people need to go through the process to learn. They don't really just want to accept, somebody telling them, and so he ordered it and he couldn't eat it. It was just, he was constantly trying to work with that cheese and he was and he goes, this is hard. I said, I know. French onion soup is really hard to eat. That's a meal. That's something, an item that I always suggest. Go with your friends and family who don't care. Yes. Don't do that at a business meal, because anytime you're distracted by your food, that means that you're not paying attention to the person that's sitting across from you.
That is so true. And I love that the lessons began almost the moment we sat down, because even your menu was carefully curated to teach a lesson. Like, you can order this or order this, but don't order this, because like you said, it'll distract from the meeting. And really, you're not there to eat.
Mm-mm.
You're there to do business. So
Yeah. And I think that was one of the takeaways from one of the people on your team, because he said, I've never really thought that when I go there, I always thought, I've got the company credit card, just going to go and order my favorite food, and we don't care about the price, and we're going to order the most expensive stuff and the wine and all the things. He goes, I never really thought that that's probably not the best thing to do, because it's not only is it not professional, it's not really the purpose of that meeting is to develop a relationship. And when you're sitting there telling them, this is on the company, man, let's live it up. What does that say about you?
exactly. You know, and it's so funny that you bring that up, and this person shall not be named, but and I mean, the mistakes started happening the moment we sat down, because it was even like, when do you eat the bread? How do you eat it? How do you get the butter? You know, what do you do with your utensils after you've used them? And I mean, like, mistakes were just, I was doing it, you know, and still, and I can't tell you, like, when I tell you, when I sit down, like with client meeting lunches, and you are the first person that pops in my head to this day, I'm not kidding, because I still remember all those lessons.
Yeah, I mean, it's the little things that make the biggest difference. And I don't want to know, I don't want to say that they're mistakes, but they are things that people notice, because there's a quote out there, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like, if you skipped learning the basics of going through a meal, what else did you skip learning? And
Mm.
so it's about, are you comfortable? Do you, like you said, do you know what to do with your utensils when you're finished using them? And do you know the silent service signal for your servers to say, can I take the plate? Or I'm not finished yet. You know, just all of those little signals. And then even the napkins, people get really nervous about napkins. That's the thing that it's a lot of times before I even get started, they're like, when do I put my napkin in my lap? What do I do? And what do I do if I have to leave the table? And what do I say? All of those things just make a big difference, because it's not so much that you do it perfectly, but it's, are you comfortable in the setting, so that your focus is not on, am I making a mistake? But your focus is on developing the relationship and that conversation.
You know, I still use my napkin the way you taught us.
Oh, good.
I mean, it's so ingrained now. I don't even
Yeah.
think about it. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, it has been, and I think it made a huge difference with our team. I'm not gonna, I can't give you like an ROI,
Right.
but I know the team went on and on about it afterwards, and we had actually, like, right before COVID, we had talked about doing another one, and especially after COVID, because we had a little bit of turn on our team, and it just, you know, life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is, I mean, but you have to, for me, the fact that you wanted to pour into them spoke volumes, because people who feel seen, valued, and heard, and feel like you care enough to help them be better, it does help with turnover. It does help with people who are, you can see who's really into it, who's really wanting to learn and grow and be better, because these are little things that make a big difference. And so it's hard to measure. There's not really a KPI on that, but the KPI would come in on, what's the culture like? What is your turnover? Is it reduced? Are you seeing that you're finding people that you can hire for culture and then train skills and those sort of things? That's where the ROI comes in. And are your team members comfortable in developing relationships? Are they doing a better job? Are you seeing over time that their sales are going up, that your clients are staying with you longer? That's really where this all pays off.
100%. And I do think that, I'm not going to say that my eating habits have kept my clients, although I don't think it hurts at all.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's one thing we really pride ourselves on with this team, is building those relationships and really putting the people, the clients, the candidates first. You know, I mean, I've got clients that I've had for over a decade that are still with me,
Yeah, of
and
course.
candidates too.
Because it's people, when they feel like you care and you have a relationship, and over time that relationship becomes stronger and they are less and less likely to leave. It also helps if there is a problem or an issue that arises. if there's a strong relationship there, they're more willing to work through it with you.
Absolutely.
And say, you know what, I get it. I know you. Let's figure out how we move past this. How do we solve this problem and then move forward? And it just makes the relationship even stronger.
Absolutely. A great example of that and building those relationships. I just had a really big issue with one of my clients, and this is one that I've had for over 10 years, and was doing a very high level search for him, got all the way to the finish line, revised offer letter, and the candidate ghosted us.
Oh.
And so when you talk about business etiquette, it's okay if you're shopping that offer. Well, it's not, but you need to tell me if you are, right? That would be courteous.
It's being open.
But, and I'm not talking about a 1 to 2 year person. I'm talking about a 20-year person experience wise. And to ghost a potential employer like that, it's not okay. I don't want to say unforgivable, but I can promise you that person's got a DNU, which means do not use next to their name in my system now.
That's right. That's right. And everyone has that little code in their system. If you are joining us live, be sure and chime in. We're here with Casey Hasten of Ascend Talent Partners. She is a recruiter, and we are talking all things business etiquette as it is National Business Etiquette Week. And so we are talking training. We're talking about how important it is to train your team members so that they can be better at their job and build better relationships. We're also talking about how business etiquette helps you as someone who is looking for a job, because we're talking ghosting an employer. Man, that is not okay. And, I've actually heard people say that companies have ghosted them as well. They send in the resume, they may or may not get a call, but I mean, at least getting an email saying we've decided to go in a different direction is so helpful. But just to ignore the application or to ignore them is really not okay, because then that speaks to your organization as well.
I have to push back on that just a little bit, because coming from a person that gets hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of resumes every single day, it is virtually impossible for me to respond. And a lot of times, and this is something too that I think is an etiquette point, people apply to jobs that they're not in any way qualified for.
Yeah.
And that's a waste of the hiring manager's time,
Yeah. How long? Sorry, that was not good etiquette. That popped in my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, the waste of time. How long do hiring managers look at resumes? I think this is interesting.
Okay, it depends. Okay, so we've got hiring managers, so those that are internal to the company. But if you're talking about recruiters, I will look at a resume probably if I even open it. So first of all, when I get resumes, typically it comes through LinkedIn. And so I have a snapshot of their LinkedIn profile. I'll look at that first. If it's not something that's interesting to me, then I don't even look at the resume. So there's a tip. Make sure your LinkedIn is up to date and on par.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And then if I do look at a resume, and if you hear my fur babies, I do apologize. They're wound up about something. If I do look at a resume, it probably takes me 10 seconds to decide if I'm going to dig any deeper, if that long.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you the first thing I look at, Julie, is I look on the right side of the resume, and what I'm looking for are dates. So make sure that your dates of employment are very, very clear and easy to see on the resume, because that's the first thing I'm going to look at, because I want to see your tenure.
Okay. So keep dates of employment current.
Oh, 100%.
Okay. So I'm making these banners as you're saying them, because these are great tips. LinkedIn profiles are important, especially if you're working with a recruiter. Keep dates of employment current. And so so we said that if you apply for a job, you may not hear back from them unless they're going to take you to the next step.
Yes.
Okay. But that then I think becomes where it's important for companies to communicate. Okay. So
100%.
Okay. So because I've heard of people who have gone through interviews and they just never heard back. And it's just like they just moved on. But I think then your contact information needs to be current as well.
Yes, and a lot of people don't put their contact information on their LinkedIn, and I get that, just because there's a lot of spammers out there. I get spammed all the time, but I keep my contact information up there. But definitely keeping, and here's something else. So this is a new trend that I'm seeing. People are not putting their phone numbers or emails on their resumes. What the heck?
Oh, so
It's
how do you get in touch with them?
I can get in touch with them because I can go to their LinkedIn, and I use Recruiter, so I can see details like normal people on LinkedIn can't see. So
Okay.
I can get it that way. But if a hiring manager doesn't have LinkedIn Recruiter, they're not going to be able to get that information. That just it blows my mind that people don't at least don't put your address. You need to put your city and state, and don't put your address again.
No address. No.
Right. But you need at the very least have an email or a phone number on there.
Yeah, I would think so. I don't know why you wouldn't at least put an email on a resume. So let's put that on there as well. And so go ahead.
I just want one other quick tip. When it comes to LinkedIn and your resumes, they need to mirror each other. Don't leave a job off your resume that you have on your LinkedIn or vice versa, and make sure those dates are the same.
Okay. I'm typing this because I think I want this to come up because you're giving some really valuable tips from a recruiter's standpoint as for people who are looking for jobs. I've heard of people applying for hundreds of jobs. And so these are things that I keep hearing. And one of the things that I keep hearing too is that people are going to LinkedIn first before the resume, which is something that you just said about, I check out your LinkedIn.
Yep.
I want to know what that is. So, LinkedIn is really important, and we are live on LinkedIn. So if you are a job seeker out there, be sure and chime in and listen to this, save this somewhere so that you can go back because these are great tips. I want to talk too about the interview. Because there was intelligent.com came out with a survey a while back. The statistics were staggering, but one of the things that showed up on there is that people will jump on video calls and not turn on their camera.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. And so anytime my candidates go for an interview, we do coaching before every time. Just because I want to set them up for success and I want them to have the best outcomes that they can. And I want to set them apart, from other candidates that may be interviewing through other recruiting agencies or just that the company found on their own. Absolutely. It is important that you have that camera on, especially I can't even imagine why you wouldn't in a video interview with a potential hiring manager.
Right.
So they can get an idea of who you are. But it's also important where you put yourself in the video. And that's one of the tips I give. You want to be as much as possible. See how my headspace is not very much? Because this gives the illusion, because it puts your eye contact closer to the camera, that you're making eye contact with them.
Right. And that's one of the things too, is you got to look in the camera. Don't look at yourself. And I find myself, when I'm talking, I look more in the camera, but when you're talking, I look more at you. But yeah, the camera is your eye contact. Yes. And that is true. And I always raise my computer up a little bit so that I can look there, because if you have it down on a desk and you're looking down, then it just gives a different illusion. So I love that tip, raise up and make sure that there's not a lot of head space there above you. That's really a good tip. Raise that. And I actually, I saw this back when I had the plumbing company and I was doing first interviews, and there were people that wouldn't turn their camera on. And so it's hard to move forward if you can't see, because an interview is where we want to connect with you. We can't connect with you if there's a black box there.
Right. And if you didn't want to see them, you would have made a phone call.
Yes. Yeah. So there's a reason for the video call.
Absolutely. We
Yeah.
want to make sure you don't have horns sticking out of your head.
Yeah. Right. We just want to connect with you. And this is, in this day and age, this is what we do. It's the video call. We do networking calls on camera now too. So yeah, it doesn't make sense. So what is another thing on the intelligent.com survey, the number one, over half of the hiring managers said that the people coming in seeking, the job seekers, did not make eye contact. Now, we've already talked about looking in the camera, and that's your eye contact when you're on video, but when you're in person, it really matters.
Absolutely. But I also want to say, don't make too much eye contact because that's weird.
Right. There's an art form to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I had someone that used to work for me that would just stare at me. And I'm like, would you blink, please?
Yes.
Do something. Look over there. You're creeping me out. So, but yeah, eye contact is huge. And my mother-in-law, so here's the thing. We do an assessment with all of our candidates. And so, and part of this assessment tells us a little bit about their thought style. And you will typically see people, so it measures active versus passive. And I like expressive versus reflective better than that language, because that's really kind of truer. But people who are highly active have brains that never shut up. And I'm one of those. My brain is always talking to me. And the problem that creates is because, think about it, when you're thinking about something, where do your eyes go?
You look
up
up
all around.
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on if you're remembering or if you're imagining the direction, or if you're looking for information, you're going to look up. And so I used to do that all the time. And my mother-in-law was like, you got to look people in the eye, Casey. And I'm like, and I had to really work at it. So consider, if you are having a problem with eye contact, that maybe you're one of those who has a very active brain and something's always chattering in your ear, and learn to quiet that noise.
Yes, I agree. And one of the things that you can do is put a mirror at your desk when you're on the phone, talking to people, to be sure and look in that mirror. Because that way you can see your own facial expressions, things like that.
I have never heard that before. I'm going to have to try that.
Yeah.
See if that helps.
It does help. When we had the plumbing company, we had a mirror up at the front desk, so the CCRs could answer the phone and look at themselves when they answered the phone, because people can hear body language
100%.
on the phone. And so and that's why you see people who are in sales and they do the dialing and their customer service, they wear the headsets and they walk around, because it gets the energy up, because people can hear that.
Oh yeah. You notice I'm standing right now.
Yes. Yeah.
I do all my interviews standing.
Standing up. Yes. Yes. And I've done some standing up too, but it puts me so high up. So I just look like this. So anyway, these are fantastic tips. And so going back to what started all of this is that you decided to bring someone in to train your salespeople on how to be better, more professional, more polished, I think it was, that we talked about. And you are also doing that with your candidates before they go on job interviews. You also coach them, because as someone who understands the importance of human behavior, if you want to make a good connection, if you want to be liked, you have to be likable. If you want to make a good human connection, you have to be connected. So these are important tips for people in the professional setting to reach out and to say, I can connect with people by how I show up.
100%. And one of the other things that I really coach my candidates on is, don't Google questions. Come up with your own questions. Be really curious when you go in there. And most of all, be authentic, because if you're not the real you when you go to that interview, you're going to have a really hard time for the next year or however long you're with that company trying to pretend.
Yeah, and I like to remind people too that yes, they are interviewing you and to see if you're going to be a good fit for their team and if, they want to see how you are, but it's also you're interviewing them
Mhm.
as well, like you just said. And so it's really important for us to come up with questions that are important to us. And I always like to ask somebody who's interviewing, especially if they say, "Well, I've been here for 20 years." At the end of the day, when they say, "Do you have questions for us?" I always like to say, what has kept you here for 20 years? What do you
Absolutely.
like most about this company that has kept you here? Things like that, because that's a curious question that puts it back on them to really talk about the culture and what they got out of it, because that will tell you, because people don't leave jobs really. They leave the managers, they leave the
Mhm.
cultures that they're in. And so if somebody's there 20 years, you can really dive into that. What's a question that you like to teach people to ask?
Um, so I more of a state. Well, two. I have a question, then a statement, and a question. Okay.
Yeah.
So the one of the questions that I absolutely want them to ask towards the end of the interview is there anything missing from my resume that would keep me from doing this job?
Oh,
Because
right,
there may be something on the not on the resume that you know how to do, but they don't know you know how to do it. Right.
right.
And then the other thing I always have them wrap up the interview with is I'm interested in this role. What are the next steps? Not because I want them to get the next steps for me. I don't care about that. I want them to show that they're interested, because when they do that, that releases endorphins
Yeah,
and
right,
for the hiring manager, and it makes you more rememberable.
right,
So
right. Very good. These are great tips. So we're talking all things etiquette. We started off with business entertaining, dining etiquette. We've gone into the skill set of interviewing, which still falls under the etiquette umbrella, because etiquette is about respect. It is about image and how others see you. And it is about how you're coming across. How do you show up, your image and that first impression? And so, do you have a tip, like one good tip about around all of this that helps people step into their power, their superpower that changes an image?
I, I, I do, and it's gonna sound generic, but I'm gonna explain.
Okay.
And so one of the qualifications for becoming a member of Success North Dallas is to honor your commitments. And we kind of started off talking about that, talking about ghosting, right?
Mhm.
But I think whenever you commit to something, whether it be at an interview or, just telling someone you're going to call them back, that you follow through on that. And if you can't follow through on that, you let the other person know,
Let
because
them
that
know.
shows respect for that other person's time. And time is all we have, right?
Right.
We've only
Right.
got a limited amount. And so being respectful, honoring your commitments, I think is probably one of my biggest pieces of advice.
I think that's a great piece of advice, because your word is your reputation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and if you forget or if something happens, falls through the crack, it happens. You call, you don't send an email, you call or get in touch with them and say, I'm so sorry, this happened. And then it's up to you then to reschedule. How can we reschedule this
Yes.
call? Yeah. Yeah, because people will forgive a mistake, but you have to own it. You have to have the conversation, which
Yes.
goes back to what you said at the beginning, where people who are looking for jobs will ghost a company. Just let them know. I mean, people understand, but you just have to have the conversation, and we just don't have enough coaching around having conversations these days, right? And so I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we face, whether you're in sales, whether you're in customer service, whether you're looking for a job, or whether you're a manager, is the art of the conversation.
There you go.
Yeah. It really matters, and it speaks to your character. And it's not that what I find, it's not that people intend to ghost or they intend to do that. They just don't know how to say it, or they have to figure out maybe they're embarrassed or they feel awkward about it. And so they just don't. And then
Well,
it reflects negatively.
and I want to share something that happened. And I am one of those, like, I guard my time fiercely, right? I have to.
Yeah.
I wear too many different hats. And I had someone, ask me for a coffee meeting. And I agree. And I keep those very limited, right? Because it's
Yep.
Drive time, man, drive time.
I know. Me too, girl.
And so I show up. Actually a few minutes early. So tip for interviews, show up about 10 to 15 minutes early, wait outside. Do not walk into a building 30 minutes early, because then that puts a lot of pressure on the hiring manager to try to start the interview early.
Right.
Sometimes. But so I show up, I'm early, I'm checking emails, I'm doing stuff. Time rolls around. I'm like, okay, she's gonna be a few minutes late. 10, 15 minutes later, I'm like, are you coming?
Are you here?
And nothing. And I came away from that. So that was 45 minutes of my time, right? Drive time and sitting there, and then drive time back. And I was so angry, so angry. And I don't know if you know this about me, but I can have a quick temper. But then later on that afternoon, she calls me and she was absolutely beside herself. So I guess my invite had gone to her junk, even though we clearly communicated over email we were going to do that. But she was just so apologetic. And I was just like, all right, you didn't need to get that mad, you know?
Yeah.
So, you
yeah.
kind of have grace on both sides, right?
Yeah. People will give you grace.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that there's not a mistake there, but people will give you grace. So yes. Oh my gosh. Casey, thank you so much for taking your time to be with us today to kick off National Business Etiquette Week and talk about the importance of training your team and then preparing how you show up. I mean, this has been two different sides of this conversation that has been very important. And I'm so grateful to you for being here. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me and letting me kick this week off for you.
I'm so glad you did. Girl, I know we'll be seeing each other around because we're always out networking.
We are.
So I know I'll be seeing you around. You have a wonderful week and we will see you soon.
All right. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you.